Truth Bombers Podcast.
Truth Bombers Podcast.
The group chat turned podcast with your hosts, Russ, Lockie, and BJ.
Oh, man.
Big dog, how are we?
Good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good.
We are up to...
Settling in for some Thursday night football.
Mate, it's the best. I love Thursday night football. People complain. I reckon it makes it feel like the weekend starts early.
No, I like it. I don't think it needs to be done every weekend, but I would say more often than not, more than what we currently have.
Yeah, I'd take that fifth game from a Saturday and pop an extra one on the Thursday night. No brainer. Yeah.
Great.
Just the two of us, mate, tonight.
Sure. It's fun by me.
Oh, boy.
He'll run a little bit smoother.
Always sneaking out of a Thursday night, old Russ doesn't want to put $20 in the can for his shit ass footy tips, and he's
on top. He's above us.
Yeah, he's doing all right. He's got those sneaky ones where it's like, why'd you pick that? And eventually you get enough of them, then some of them start paying off, but only halfway there. So you don't want to hit your straps too early. But he is actually at the footy, so.
Oh, nice.
Joining us tonight, episode 30 of the Truth Bombers podcast, mate. These are starting to stack up. We're going to get through at least 50 for the first season.
Perfect.
Yeah, crushing it. All right, shall we?
Yep. Get stuck in.
Milestone game, 150th game, obviously this weekend, 150th year celebration game against the arch rival, the Blues. I've been watching a bunch of stuff all week that they've been putting up just with like old games. And you sent me that clip from must have been like 2001 or 2002 or something, back when we were good. The last time we were any good, winning finals.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that's how long it's been.
Yeah. Just guys like Mark Johnson and Justin Blumfield and Blake Carosello running around. The glory days.
The good old days.
All right. Team selection. Basically what we thought when we had a chat on Tuesday night. We've almost called it pretty word for word. Waterman out, Wanganeen out, Devon Smith out, Braden Ham out. My vote would be that Tex comes back in as the medical sub for those changes. Stringer has been named in. Matt Guelphy comes back from that hamstring complaint, and obviously Mason Redman comes back in off his suspension. Probably the only other one that I was really sort of keen to see was Langford. There was a lot of talk a bit earlier in the week that he might be back. Maybe for once a precautionary approach from the Essendon Football Club high performance team.
Yeah. Love the ins. Stringer's a match winner that we so desperately need. Guelphy and Redman are just solid players that play their role most weeks. With you, I would have liked to have seen Langford if he was fit, but maybe that means next week Snelling and Langford will be in the edge of selection. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. James Stewart named as an emergency this week as well. So he's obviously back from his injury woes, along with Tom Cutler, who we had a bit of a discussion about on Tuesday that apparently he hadn't been training with the main group too much. Alec Waterman named as an emergency and Tex Wanganeen as mentioned. Well, let's get through it, starting with the full back line. Jordan Ridley, Zach Reed keeps his spot. Jaden Laverde, who's been pretty solid all year. Mason Redman obviously slots back into halfback flank with Jake Kelly at centre halfback and Nick Hine. That's got some pace about it, that halfback line.
Yeah, the one thing I would say is we sort of talked on the last episode about maybe whether it was a Heppel, a Kelly, a Reed, that maybe one of those players would come out. Be interesting to see who stacks up on Mackay and Curnow.
As
Mackay has been named, so they're two forwards that can easily take over again.
Yeah, man. Who do we give? Kelly to Curnow and Laverde to Mackay?
See, Mackay's a monster.
If Mackay's playing, I'm surprised that Stewart's only been named as an emergency.
Yeah, here's the problem. So I'd say Reed has the height to go with Mackay, but is just so undersized, so he couldn't play on him unless you wanted a baptism of fire. Kelly's probably undersized versus Curnow. I'd almost prefer Laverde on Curnow. and then triple team Mackay.
let Reed play like Harris Andrews, kind of 4 or 5 meters off him, and then hopefully just closing speed.
Reed and Ridley to just tag team him.
Yeah. Well, they're obviously worried about the Carlton forwards because they're trying to hide Dyson Heppel up there on a wing now and keep him away from the half back line, with Parrish in the center and Jai Caldwell named on the other wing. Our half forward line, Dylan Shield, Matt Guelphy, Sam Durham. And I'm going to come back to why that's interesting in a second, with Peter Wright, Jake Stringer, and Harrison Jones named as our full forward line, which on paper is pretty solid. And then Andrew Phillips named as our number 1 ruck, with Zach Merritt and Nick Martin following, Draper, McGrath, Hobbs, and Perkins as the interchange. Did you catch David King, his big spiel about the Essendon midfield coming into this week? He was sort of talking a lot about Hobbs and Perkins and like a lot of analytics on like how kind of exciting they are to watch, and basically said, if you put Parrish and Shield and McGrath into the midfield this week, they're just going to get absolutely fucking monstered. So, which I completely agree with. And winning the ball hasn't been an issue for us in terms of clearance. It's just that we don't do anything with it after we've won it. What are your thoughts, mate? Do you think that, well, if we're going to get monstered in the midfield, we may as well get more clearance work into Perko and Hobbsy? And
so in a perfect world, Stringer is 100% match fit. And I would say him, Parrish, and Merritt are our top 3. So they're attending every centre bounce for my mind if they're all fit and in form, right? Here's the problem. Merritt, McGrath, Parrish, Shield, they're all the same size in terms of height and roughly body weight. Like none of them are like an Ollie Wine size that are maybe not that tall, but just like built like a brick shit house. But Perkins and Hobbs are even smaller. Like they've got like 5 to 10 kilos less and they're not as experienced. So I'm worried that if you put in those sort of players, like they wouldn't learn anything out of it. They would just get comprehensively beaten, and it's like head drops, don't really learn any lessons.
who goes to Cripps? Who takes Cripps at the center bounce? Like, do we have anyone that we can, match up?
Well, the only player that I've seen sort of play that role a little bit hit and miss for us this season has been McGrath.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Could you have Merritt play a more defensive role on someone like Walsh? Could you have a McGrath try to play a shutdown role on Cripps? And then Parrish, you just tell to hunt the ball and see if he can get the clearance himself.
The last bloke to absolutely shut down Patrick Cripps in an Essendon jumper. Can you remember who it was?
I can. Dominating in some, was it Sample?
Yeah, like 18 tackles or something in the sample.
How many disposals did he have?
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you have 18 tackles.
All he does is tackle. All he does is tackle.
That's all we need. We are, of course, talking about Dylan Clark, who apparently that game in the sample, like it was like the highest recorded tackle count of all time. So there was like half the team list had above 10 tackles. It was nuts. So a little bit interesting there. I would be surprised, like obviously the season's gone. Maybe it is time to just, like we've talked about, throw things around and just try different things and see what happens. Like maybe even for someone like a Sam Durham or a Matt Guelphy who like have that super kind of aggressive streak in them. I actually think that saying to Durham to go to someone like Cripps, like he's not going to win his own ball too much or really do much with it. But what he would learn in terms of like running patterns, running lanes, like how to break open, run both ways, like that might be something. And it's just like, if your job is just to give him the shits all day, like don't worry about like getting the ball yourself. Just try to, inhibit his impact. The question becomes what happens when Cripps rests forward, and then there's Cripps, Mackay, and Kerno all in the forward 50 that we're just like cooked.
Yeah. This is something I've thought about before and mentioned about Redmond maybe playing on a wing. Could you throw him in at certain stoppages in a negating role? He's a defender. He's someone who's actually got a bit of aggression about him, a bit of mongrel. And weight-wise, obviously, he's a little bit out of his class, but less so, I think, than someone like Durham.
Yeah. Yeah. It becomes like an attitude conversation that we're talking about, right? Like, okay, we don't have anyone physically that's gonna stack up on paper next to him, but like, who hits to hurt, right? Like who is actually willing to drop a shoulder and when they lay a tackle, actually try to hurt a bloke? And that probably is Mason Redmond, right? Yep. Probably more so than anyone else. I can't see like, well, potentially like a Jake Kelly, but he's not going to run around like anywhere outside the back line. And then potentially a Laverde who's going to have, you know, his hands pretty full the whole day anyway, as it is. So, I don't know. When I saw some of those ins, like we sort of spoke about on Tuesday, like, oh, you start to get, you know, you wonder just a little bit of what if. I just don't know, given where like our pressure's been and the kind of football that we've been playing, we don't even, it's not even like we've got that running game up and going where it's like offensively we could play off them and maybe win our own ball and push them real wide, you know, and then defensively lock down. We haven't seen it all season unless there's been some magic happening like over the bye, which fingers crossed, like maybe there has been. And you do see it year to year. Teams come out after the bye. Hawthorn last year was a really good example, like kind of did nothing all year, came out after the bye, and then all of a sudden kind of won quite a few in their run home, started to kind of contend with us for maybe making that final run. But I don't know, you start looking through Carlton's list and looking at their size, and then even their second tier, like their draft picks like Durden and Kennedy and guys who aren't physically big, but all of a sudden just playing out of their skin and playing hard football. Like we've just had this whole year, we've kind of step aside because we don't want to get hurt, almost kind of appear with our game. So, yeah.
Yeah. Look, if Mackay wasn't playing and Curnow and Walsh and Cripps and Chera and Hewitt and maybe a couple of their backmen, I'd give us a good chance. But I cannot see us winning.
When Wiedering went down, I was like, like he is like without
telling
him,
me there's a chance.
Telling me there's a chance, like a cold day in hell. Yeah, I think again, it's one of those games where for us, it's going to be decided in the first quarter. If we come out and kick 6 points, like it's gone. But if we came out, Harry Jones kicked 1 or 2, Peter Wright kicked 1 or 2, and Stringer can get himself up and about and kick 1. And all of a sudden we've got 5 goals, maybe even a 6th heading into quarter time. Even if it becomes a shootout game, which it often does when we play Carlton, at least there's a little bit of confidence in going forward. Like I think that was ultimately, you know, not that I expected us to beat Port Adelaide, but like you don't do yourselves any favors when your first 7 scoring shots all miss and you're 4 goals down at quarter time. You know, and we have tend to see those little patterns emerge in games this year when we do get off to a fire and we do kick a couple of goals early, that the boys do get up and about and that self-belief starts to build. And, you know, like missing goals is pretty contagious, but a lot of the time kicking properly and kicking goals is super contagious as well. So, and like I said before, on paper, like Peter Wright, Jake Stringer, Harrison Jones as like a full forward line, like that's big contested marking ability, and then someone hopefully finally at the feet. But I don't think Stringer will play second fiddle, so it's almost like we've too crowded that full forward line, right? Granted, he probably start in the center bounce and move forward, but I can't see Stringer playing a role where it's like he's at Wright's feet. Like he wants to be the guy that's also like essentially, I guess he'd be the third tall in this instance, like leading, getting his own ball and taking his set shots from the boundary.
Yeah, look, honestly, if I could like paint it in a positive light, they don't have a designated ruckman, right? So Draper and Phillips need to have a massive game in the middle, and maybe that can balance out the midfield battle. And then if you look forward, it's like, okay, well, they're missing some tall timber down back. So if Wright can have one of those games where he's leading for the ball while we're actually kicking it to him well, like there's definitely a chance he could have a big game. Stringer, he's someone that even with not many disposals can always kick 2 or 3, even if he's had a fairly quiet game. Jones had that game back before the bye, so hopefully he's better for the run. So like I can see that we could have some offensive power forward. It's just matching them enough in the middle so that when we do go forward, we've actually got a chance
That-
rather than
That
the back line just being copping it like inside 50 out the inside 50.
Yeah. The half forward line too, like if we think about blokes that would get to the forward ball, like having Guelphy and Durham running forward as those kicks come in from the center to the tall targets is probably not a bad idea as well. Even if it is just that forward pressure, if ball comes to ground, contest, wrap it up, like hold it up, a couple of offensive 50 tackles, which we haven't really done all year or seen much of, especially with Guelphy being out for a couple of weeks. Jake Kelly at centre half back. Do you think there's been any kind of like repercussions from getting caught out, last man back, that sort of stuff, and they've brought him up to make him more accountable further up the ground? Or do you think this is just, that's the back six and we'll kind of line up appropriately?
Yeah, I think same with Dyson Heppel maybe being named like through the centre or on a wing. I think it's just they've thrown the names at the whiteboard and seen where they're stuck.
Yeah. Plus or minus on your multi for 39 and above, the 39 and a half, do you reckon, for margin?
Minus. I would love to see us have a very strong game. Like, I'm not expecting us to win, but all the hype around the 150th year, arch rival. We've come out after the bye and picked up a couple of players like back from injury. Like, what's stopping us from playing some good footy?
Yeah. I hope it absolutely pounds down with rain and it's just one of those super like wet, gross,
low skill
footy where it's like, hopefully we can just fumble it forward and a nice low scoring affair. So even if we get blown out, it's only like
still
2 or 3 goals.
Well, we'll see.
We will see indeed. For anyone listening who wants to come and join us, we're going to go and grab a couple of beers down at Doncaster Hotel in the sports bar there to watch the game. I actually really wanted to go. I've been toying with going all week, but still a bit concerned that in a crowd of 80,000 people, half of them who are going to be pissed off with the result, they'll probably get knocked and pushed around and stuff a little bit. So might give the knees another couple of weeks. The girls, mate.
Yeah, go on.
Qualifying final this week against the Hawks.
Yep.
Finally made it, got through the season undefeated, 2 draws. Doesn't get much closer than that to having a loss, but undefeated getting through. And they've got the Hawks, who I think it was a pretty tight game when they played them during the season as well. So best of luck, ladies. Go out there and show us how it's done by winning a final, because it's not something that we've seen for an incredibly long time. Although I think they did make it all the way through to the granny last year and then lose a grand final to Geelong. So
yeah,
hopefully that still stings a little bit.
Yeah, we'll see.
You gonna head down?
Probably not.
See what the weather's like. Wet weather footy, anything can happen. Shall we get to the tips, mate? I know the third quarter's starting here and both want to get back and flick it back on. Who's your lock for this week?
Now, this is the longest price I've seen them at all year. The D's, $1.45 versus the Pies. Lots of turmoil throughout the week. I'll put them as my lock.
That's been hilarious. Jake Melksham, ex-Essendon, has sat Stephen May or put him through a desk with one hit. Used to be a junior, like national champion boxer. Yep. And Stephen May is not like a small guy either. He's put him through the front reception desk at Entrecot in South Yarra. That's what we traded away all our good fighters, like all our fight players. We've like got rid of them. Dylan Clark and Jake Melksham. That's a danger game for Melbourne. If they lose 3 in a row, are you still convinced they'll win the flag and it's just a little bit of like restabilizing? Or
yeah, honestly, I still think they're the best team in it. And 2 losses at this stage of the year, when you've won 9 or 10 in a row, like, doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
If they lost a third, you go, oh, like starting to get a little bit worried, but I still think they're the best side.
So if anyone wants to know the difference between an Essendon Football Club and a Melbourne Football Club when it comes to actually creating strong culture, it's having the ability to sit and rest one of your best players and key players for not living up to the standards of the club. And that is we won't even drop Dylan Shield to the VFL, and they are not letting Stephen May play this week because he's broken team rules. You see the same thing at Fremantle with Michael Fredericks as well, was having a few beers on a Sunday night on a 6-day break against club rules. He'll miss next week. Like, and until we're willing to lose games, which like we're doing anyway. So like you would think this is the time to start that culture. But being willing to lose so as not to sacrifice the standards, that short-term pain, long-term, like that's why they're winning premierships. And that's why we're sitting in 16th, because we don't enforce any of our standards. We just talk about them. Okay.
Yep.
So Melbourne are your lock?
Yep.
All right. Well, no doubt Russ is going to go GWS over North Melbourne. So I'll leave that one for him. So Carlton over Essendon. I'm going to take Brisbane over the Saints. That doesn't look very close in terms of the odds. I think that's going to be much closer. I think your boy Ben King, if he can get a hold of Harris Andrews early, like that might just be the difference this week. Watching them play against Freo, they looked good early and then sort of dropped off. I think they're another team, I guess, similar to Melbourne, that like this week gives them an opportunity to actually prove a point that they're as good as the hype is that's surrounding them. So I'm gonna get on them for my lock of the week for that one. In terms of the actual standings on the footy tipping, there's been a bit of movement. Old mate Russ has gone up, sitting in 4th place now, sitting on 72, myself on 71, and Lockie top 10. You're back in the top 10, mate. 69 tips for the season. So
I purposely left myself on 69.
And you've tipped Port.
I'll get up. I'll be fine.
We'll see. I think you and maybe one other person have tipped Port. Nice to see Julia Hawkins coming back to the pack as well. She's obviously doing tips for every game of the round at the moment.
Hey, she's still right up there.
She is. She's sitting in 5th. So she's one out of the top 4. And Brodie Harrison still sitting on the top, although has self-admittedly been getting quite nervous that lead has been cut into by none other than Mrs. Katrina Borg, who now sits just 2 off the top of the table.
Doing very well.
Just very frustrating, trust me. All right, my man.
All right.
Are we going to see you tomorrow night?
I'll be there in spirit.
You don't want me to just order you a CC and dry to be ready just for the start of the second quarter?
Nah, I think with Bombers and Carlton, I'll need to just be by myself in a dark room.
All right. If we win, we'll catch up on Saturday night and watch the replay. All right.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Sounds good.
All right, mate. Have a good week.
Right.
See you soon.
See you guys.
Yeah, Bombers.